looking my opponent in the eyes, that's the moment of truth. When you hear the cage door literally lock, like that's the moment of truth that can literally paralyze guys with fear. And whenever I could look these guys in the eyes, it shifted, it flipped. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me. And it was a different kind of mindset where it's like, you're not doing what I'm trying to do. We're going to drill a water well. We're going to bring people clean water. It's going to be life-changing, potentially life-saving, beautiful, clean, crisp, clean water for the very first time in these communities that I know, love, and want to help, because they've helped me so much. They changed my life. In many ways, they saved my life.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators podcast. I'm Seth Deckman, your Keynote Curator. Our guest today is Justin Wren. Justin, welcome to the podcast.
Seth, thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful.
We're grateful too, Justin. There's a lot to cover. We're going to do our level best to cover it all and maybe more. We're going to reveal a lot about you and the work you do and the impact you have, not just as a keynote speaker, but on the world at large. I'm going to start with a quote, and then I'd like to kind of get your reaction or your response to it. I came across a quote of yours that said, "When I stopped fighting for myself and started fighting for others, I felt passion, I felt purpose, and that's what led to my greatest impact." I mean, to me, Justin, that's real compelling words coming from a former MMA fighter, an elite performer. You know, the accolades go on and on. 5-time All-American, 2-time national champion, 10-time state champion. But the fight that had you fighting for others is where you found your most impact. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, thank you. First, I already know just by how thoughtful your question is that this is going to be fun. This is going to be a great podcast. So thank you for having me on. I'm really grateful. Yeah, so fighting is all about generating impact, right? Whether that's with a punch, a knee, an elbow, a kick, whether that's with a takedown and a slam, you know, we're wanting to generate impact. But man, I never could have imagined the path or the trajectory life would take me on. And so I would much rather, like, it was a light bulb moment for me. I would much rather have a greater impact on this world or in people's lives than on one opponent or one opponent at a time. And so I took a big break from fighting, and then I made a comeback. And when I made the comeback, everything was just different. It was just different because I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting to win, get the microphone, tell a people group story that adopted me in, that calls me family, that gave me names and that I just loved. And we're going to drill a water well. So it just completely changed when I made that comeback, because looking my opponent in the eyes, that's the moment of truth. When you hear the cage door literally lock on the amateur level, your first pro fight, the first big show under the big lights on the big stage, like that's the moment of truth that can literally paralyze guys with fear, because you hear that lock and there's no escape. And whenever I could look these guys in the eyes, it shifted, it flipped, where it was, I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me. And it was a different kind of mindset where it's like, you're not doing what I'm trying to do. We're going to drill a water well. We're going to bring people clean water. It's going to be life-changing, potentially life-saving, beautiful, clean, crisp, clean water for the very first time in these communities that I know, love, and want to help, because they've helped me so much. They changed my life. In many ways, they saved my life. So I went through this period of addiction, depression, 2 times going to treatment, 2 times having a suicide attempt, both real deal suicide attempts. And so I found purpose through service. And one of the things that I guess raised the stakes or raised the bar of necessity of why it matters to win, and win this fight called life, was I held a young boy in my hands, Andy Bo, and I buried him. And I bought the shovel, I bought the casket. Like, we can go into that at greater lengths if we need to, but or want to. But man, like that's where the passion and purpose of service through knocking out the water crisis came from. Was actually not just seeing it or hearing about it, but holding it And I knew making that comeback, like, and now, like, it's still there, right? It's life
Yeah.
after fighting and impact, generating impact, and how can it go on and on and on sustainably?
I'm just present to the passion and the transformation, and there's so much to unpack there. You said the light bulb went off, and the world today, if you look at it through a certain lens, whether it's social media, cable TV, the news, whether it's, on a newspaper or wherever, things are going to hell in a handbasket. And while I'm not in denial and I don't want to avoid reality and what's so in the world, I would say on a whole that, things are better than they were yesterday for the world. And you talk about water, and we take it for granted here. People call it first world problems or uptown problems. We take that for granted. And when there's a lot of catastrophizing and, the glass half empty, and, we could go on and on. I can find ourselves searching and reaching for love, for connection, for that connective tissue, for ways to make a difference. For those that are, struggling to find purpose, what would you say to them?
I would say just start somewhere. It doesn't have to
Mhm.
be this big grandiose thing. I'm not asking people to put their lives on hold and pick up and move to the middle of the forest in Congo or Uganda with me and live with a hunter-gatherer tribe. Like, I'm not telling people they need to do that, but it needs to be something, right? We can all fight for someone or something. And even if that fight is just for one person, one at a time. And so have your head on a swivel. That's honestly, before I went to Africa, it started at a children's hospital. A dad invited me to come visit his son who had a traumatic brain injury, who was a fan of my fighting, that watched me on the Ultimate Fighter TV show. And I went there and it changed my life. Light bulb moment. I left that room and the nurse handed me a pamphlet saying, "You did a great job in there and you should do it more. And you should come back and be a volunteer in the oncology unit. We could use you." And so it turned into 1 day a week, 3 days a week, 5 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. Then going to their Christmas parties or having it there, me dressing up literally as Santa Claus. And I have a picture of that. So you can start small in your local community, in your backyard. That snowballed to the Denver Rescue Mission with the homeless. And then that turned into an at-risk youth group in the inner city. And then I went over to Africa and had my life just shook up and changed and given the greatest purpose that I know that I could live for right now. But that even turned into keynote speaking and like sharing how I've learned that I can make and create an impact, and how that can change and transform and go well beyond my own life. It can have this snowball, or in wrestling we call it chain wrestling. How can you link the chain together from this moment to this
Mhm.
moment? And how do you be a well-rounded fighter, but how can you be a well-rounded human and put love and compassion in action? And how can you fight for people? And how can you advocate and be a voice for people? And how can you honestly, I think that's part of leadership, right? Leadership is having a heart of service, not leading from the back and cracking a whip, but being willing to roll up your sleeves, get down into action, show people. Like, there's a John Maxwell quote that just came to my mind, and I don't know why, but it's a good one. It's a good leader knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. So it's very proactive. It's very
Yep.
involved, and it's
Yeah.
very like get your hands dirty, jump in the trenches, and like be part of the change. Don't be on the
No,
side.
yeah. No go and show. It's
Yeah,
all action, right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I never thought this would be part of my journey, and I didn't plan to bring this up, but I started at the children's hospital, and then all of a sudden they needed a Santa Claus, right? So that's actually me. I've been doing it for 11 years now. And that's for foster care kiddos there. This is at a children's hospital. So all these fun opportunities just they come up where if you have your head on a swivel, you're just looking to make a difference, things will come into your path and opportunities will spring up. And if it feels like it resonates, where it's like, you know what, I could actually do that. I could
Yeah.
play a part. I could have a role. and I could brighten someone's day. I could lift them up. And as you lift up others, it actually lifts you up.
Justin, I feel that whether it's keynoting or in the oncology unit or with the Mbutis in the Congo Basin rainforest, I think that there's a real hunger on both sides of the coin. And correct me if I'm wrong, to be contributed to and to contribute to. It's the
Yeah.
receiving, it's the yin and the yang. Little off topic here, but it's kind of like me and you right now. No hair and way hair,
Way too
right?
much hair?
No, way too much hair. From my perspective, it's awesome. I've got a little bit of follicle envy. It's healthy envy. But there's a hunger out there, and not to belabor the point, but if our lens is so limited that there's catastrophe everywhere, and there's wars, and there's hunger, and there's famine, and there's slavery, which is something I know that you're passionate about and touched on, and people are asleep to it, or lack of fresh water. The other side of the coin is that you said start somewhere, start anywhere. A lot of our guests on our podcast are from the military, and the line that you all hear, whether you're boarding a plane or at a public sporting event or a concert, thank you for your service. But really, you going to oncology and serving, or volunteering at the local tennis tournament is serving, making sure people are safe and organized and are enjoying it and getting the most out of their experience. I mean, serving. I was a teacher for 6 years, and while I got paid and I loved it, I felt like I was connected on a whole deeper level, making an impact.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a real hunger out there in the world out there, like it's some abstract.
No, there absolutely is. I would say that for me, what are we here for if we're not here to contribute? If we're not here to make an impact? So one of the things I talk about and up at the top and towards the close of my keynote is, what meaningful impact would you make if you only knew you could?
Yeah.
I want to start that, get that in their mind. It's like, oh, like, what is it? And then through my journey, I take them through this narrative and have these key actionable takeaways of like what they can think about and what they can look for and how they can go out and make an impact, how they can contribute. Because if we see all this stuff, the stuff I've seen, I've literally participated in burying 5 children under the age of 5 due to dirty water. That wrecked me. It changed my life. It tore my heart apart. It absolutely did. It crushed underneath the weight of seeing that, because no child should die from just not having access to clean water. And I could stay bitter, or I could say, you know what, 13 years later, we're building in July or in August, we're just weeks away, right, from building an actual hospital, a school where we have numerous different ways of water, rain catchment on more than 30,000 square feet of building, water wells, a water reservoir, and it is being built in honor of Andy Bo, the first child that I held. And it's
I'm getting chills, dude. I'm getting chills.
Well, great. But that's how I get chills. It's like, you know what? I could have came home and done nothing. And I don't think anyone would have blamed me. And I don't know that I would have blamed myself, but I would have felt like there was something I could have done. And on my deathbed, that's what I would be worried about, is I coulda, woulda, shoulda, and what might have happened if I would have taken a little bit of action. Our first goal was getting 20 acres of land on behalf of the Mbuti Pygmy people, drilling 2 water wells. That has turned into more than 3,000 acres of land that, for their people group, it's the first time that it's known in history that they've actually had land ownership. It's providing clean water to more than 52,000 people, more than 85 water wells, and it's just snowballed. So the first goal we set, like, we just crushed it, blew through it.
Yeah.
And it has taken a lot of time, but it's been time well spent, worth it.
Have you found that, the success breeds success? I mean, kind of like in your competing in MMA or whatever endeavor you take on, and then it becomes attractive and appealing to people to get involved, whether it's providing resources to their own time and energy.
Sure. I would say absolutely. Our main focal point is, how do we create opportunity? We say opportunity is greater than charity. Charity can be great, but opportunity is just always better. And like charity, I applaud it. Like it's great, make it like contribute, but there's a way to give back and there's a way to give better, right? Like, so don't just give back, give better. And so how do we do that? By equipping people with the tools, educating with the knowledge, empowering them to be the change in their own community where they have the light bulbs, where they make the great, we might ask some great questions, but they make even better suggestions. And then we can take collaborative effort and action and impact. So our whole thing is about how do we really do the best thing for the community? Well, there's not a cookie cutter blueprint. You know, they have to have their input, their voices heard. It has to be their ideas. It has to be their ownership, because a little bit of the dark side of the NGO or nonprofit world, or let's just narrow it down to the water sector. There's over 230,000 broken wells in Africa right now. That is billions of wasted charitable dollars, billions with a B. And the normal traditional approach is, I hope this doesn't sound crude, but it's the show up, blow out technique. It's announce your arrival with a parade. It's throw a party. It's get your pictures, and it's peace out. You know, there's no personal relationship. There's no follow up. It's not locally available. It's not locally affordable. The locals aren't trained. It's not a local solution to a local problem. So therefore, it's going to continue. It's going to need maintenance. It's going to need maintenance.
Yeah, it's going to be maintenance, and it might need, you know, an expansion, or it might need to be shut down and moved because it's a dynamic situation, or it's not, the capacity doesn't provide. But I want to dial into, you know, you touch on leadership, you touch on community building, you touch on philanthropy and making an impact, fighting for others. You are clearly from North America, from the United States, and you have your predisposed ideas and conceptions and notions of what it is to do all that, lead, communicate, create community. When you had your experience with the Mbutis and began to deploy this idea of, you know, making a difference, and even the Batwa Pygmies of Uganda, were there specific virtues or concepts or notions of leadership and community building that were foreign to you, that you were able to fold in, and that were standing alone, were unique, but had great value, that were hidden from your view, if you will?
Yeah, I would say that there was a few things. When I got there, my second time going, I wanted to just live there.
And if I hacked the pronunciation, you
no,
know,
you're good.
help me.
No, I'll tell you this. The FA Pygmy people named me Etheosa, and the Mbuti named me Mbuti Pygmy, and the Batwa named me Olengama. And so
Olengama.
Yeah, you have to say them that
Our
way.
next guest is Olengama.
What? Oh yeah. That's some of the worst calls. Yeah. Hey yo. And so Etheosa means the man that loves us. And I obviously cherish, it means a lot to me. Mbuti Pygmy means the big pygmy. And so that's what they named me. And my name was the Viking in the UFC. You can kind of see why if you look at me. But I wanted to make that comeback and come back for them and fight for them. And so that's the name they wanted. I asked them, what should I be called whenever I come back to fighting? They're like, this, Mbuti Pygmy. And so, but Olengama for the Batwa, that's named after King Nzito, his father. That was his name. And his father had a dream. Yeah, his father's dream and vision. He drew it with a stick in the dirt. Was one day it would be so great if we could have our own land, if we could have our own farms, if we could have our houses, school, education, or healthcare, like our clinic, a clinic that doesn't deny us and turn us away and neglect us or reject us, hospital treatment. And so it's really been awesome to say, we're going to come alongside that vision, and we're going to try to help you make it happen, because this is your initiative. It's your project. It's your sustainable community. We're just alongside you. We have joined forces with you. We will try to do our very best, and we'll bring in experts and teaching and training. But really, this is what you have to drive forward, and we're going to match your energy. We're not going to outdo your energy. We're going to match your energy. So as much as you take action, we'll take action. It's going to be a collaboration. And I think that's leadership. So you asked specifically about a principle that were like light bulb moments for me. Well, there's three that come to mind, and they're three Swahili proverbs. before I met them, I struggled with addiction. I had Oxycontin addiction. I had a surgery. I had this was 2005. So we didn't know nearly as much about Oxycontin as we do now. And I had 3 different doctors give me 3 different scripts. There was 90, 120, 120 each month, like a copious amount and no real oversight. And so in many ways, it stole my, if I could say, soul, right? It stole who I was as a human being and my mind, my heart, my passion, my purpose, all that stuff. I didn't have it. And it made fighting very empty for me. So I get my hand raised and I would think, is this it? Is that all? Like, there's got to be something more. I couldn't get out of there fast enough.
Kind of like a booby prize, almost like an empty victory.
Yeah, it didn't matter to me. I would get my hand raised. I'm like, what am I doing this for? And I would go back to the drugs and drinking, and it just sucked. When I met them, there was a Swahili proverb that says, if there is no enemy within, the opponent on the outside can do us no harm. And I was just, whoa, like, okay, that's some deep stuff. That's some,
dude, I just got chills again. I'm gonna use up all my chill factor.
Well, I think it's just so profound because I was like, whoa, that's some ancient wisdom. That's some ancestral knowledge that has been passed down from person to person. And when I look at that, they might have, quote unquote, the least. Anthropologists call them some of the most oppressed people on earth. And on the human development index, they're some of the poorest of the poor, right? In the poorest of the poor nations. And they don't get paid a money. So they don't have any resources. And it's like, if they can have that outlook on life, if they can have that deep wisdom, like, I should be able to take that with me, right? And so when things get hard, I'm thinking like, okay, is this really the external circumstance, or is this my internal condition?
Yeah.
If I can work on this and work on me. So when it came to depression and addiction, it's like, okay, with addiction, I have to face it all, feel it all, because that's where the magic happens. If I can work on that thing inside me, the stuff, the triggers, the other things, like, those won't affect me as much or at all. And then when it came to depression, like, I think there's a book with this title, but I really love it. And for a guy like me, it actually resonates. I didn't even read the book. The title was enough. You got to love yourself like your life depends on it. Because for me, the stuff I've struggled with, like, it actually does matter. I have to love myself so that I can love others in a more sustainable way, a deeper way, a meaningful way. And so then there's 2 other Swahili proverbs, and that is, and I think this is for all of us, because one, this is who they are. It's in their DNA. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That's actually a Swahili proverb. If you trace it back, it'll also be attributed to the Dalai Lama. I think it was a Swahili.
I've heard it. I've heard iterations of it. Right.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so we need tribe. We need community. We can't do this on our own. As a fighter, sometimes you think you do stuff on your own, and no, you had your coaches, you had your training partners, you had your strength coach, you had your family, you had your friends.
It's so antithetical to the Occidental, the Western world, where, the individual, and, there's even well-known people that are like, oh, I did it on my own. I was born, poor, and walked uphill both ways to school in the snow, and nobody ever helped me. And the truth of the matter is, there were a lot of people, whether they were invisible hands or not, whether they were kind of hidden from your view or not, nobody rows the boat alone.
Yeah. No one's a self-made millionaire, probably, right? Or
No.
Self-made success. And so the third Swahili proverb that really was a light bulb moment, it actually kept me there. I've had malaria 5 times. And the first time and the third time were brutal. Third time I had cerebral malaria. So I had parasites in my brain. I had to poison my brain with medication to kill the parasites in my brain.
Oof.
Wild, right? So that was a long recovery. First time I lost 33 pounds in 5 days. I was, well, I don't want to, someone might be on their lunch break, but it was, let's just say what was coming up and out of me was red and green and blood and bile, and it was not fun. Lost 33 pounds in 5 days. I had something called black water fever. I think if we Google that fact, it would say 25 to 50% of people who get it die. And so it was a great thing. And it was really hard. And I had been evac'd basically out of the Congo rainforest with just one pilot and me on a very little janky or just really old plane. And when I got out of there, and landed in Uganda. Like I was going in and out of consciousness. They pulled me out of the plane into not an ambulance, but a vehicle to take me to the hospital. And I had failure after failure after failure trying to drill our first well. And so I thought, I had a little bit of success in the US learning. One of the things I did was I went to probably what a lot of millennials do or whatever. I went to how to drill your own well on Google.
Right.
And I got to how to drill your own well.org or .com and
Right.
going to Home Depot and Lowe's.
There's the Association of Well Drillers United or something like that.
Yeah, well, this guy was basically just a tutorial guy on YouTube, and I started trying to do it, and I got a little bit of success, and I went, and then I got one in, and I was like, okay, time to go to Africa. Like, let's go. And so I took 1 ton of well drilling equipment with me on flights, and luckily Qatar Airlines found out what I was doing. I'd gone on Joe Rogan's podcast and a few others, and a video of me went viral, and it was on Jimmy Kimmel and the Today Show, and I was on TMZ. I was sandwiched in between really good company. It was Lindsay Lohan and right before Honey Boo Boo.
Well, if you had asked me where on TMZ would you be sandwiched between, I would have probably guessed that. So, I'm not surprised. Yeah.
Right. But people heard I was living in this hut and I was going back. And if anyone's watching on video, this was my home for a full year. And I've built up probably close to 3 years in huts like this. And now we've gone from huts to real great, sustainably built like homes that will last 50 plus years. And people are like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And I'm like, we're going to go. And this is what we're going to do. And there's a team there that is hungry, ready. They're chomping at the bit to start drilling wells. So I'm going to do that. And when I got there, I was a white belt well driller. I actually had no experience, right? And this is a very technical job. You're wrestling the earth and you come across all these different geological zones and collapsing zones, and everything you do doesn't work and it's not prime conditions. And I had blisters all over my hands and my back it was the hardest backbreaking work I've ever done. Each well is about 1 ton of well drilling equipment. And we're having to hike it in through the rainforest where there are no roads. We're having to carry bags of bricks and bags of cement and bags of gravel and just hike that in. It was brutal. So after 6 months of failure, and honestly, I started feeling guilty. Like, are we getting people's hopes up who have literally lost children? And I'm not the guy. And how am I doing this? And I don't want to, I got to get some more training or whatever. And there's a hero of the story that comes in where when I got malaria and I went back to Uganda, I called my father figure in Congo and I said, I don't know what to do. Maybe I do need to go home and get more training. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to call a guy. Maybe he'll call you and give you some advice. He's gotten some wins under his belt and this is what he does. And I'm like, okay, that's great. And he goes, wait, I think you need to hear something right now. One, you call it Fight for the Forgotten. That's the name of the organization. They told you, everyone else calls them the Forest People, but they call themselves the Forgotten. If that's the name of the organization, you have to remember who or why and who you fight for. Remember who, why, and who you fight for. I was like, oh, that's good. Don't give up quite yet. And then he said, you need to hear this because you have malaria. It's a mosquito-borne parasite. But here's a Swahili proverb. And it's, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try to sleep in a closed room with a mosquito. And it was like kind of tongue in cheek. And I needed to have a little bit of a laugh. But then I thought about it more and I'm like, whoa, I have faced opponents 6'7", 6'8", 6'10", heavyweight fighters taking big swings at me, right? And luckily with the tall guys, I always had the biggest luck and I finished those guys in the first round. But I'm like, man, those guys couldn't beat me up as much as a little mosquito. Or a parasite inside that mosquito, a microscopic parasite. It's like, well, if that's true, and if this is some ancient wisdom from these people who I love and who have accepted me and allowed me to come live with them, and they've changed my life. And if I'm really partnering to try to do something great for them, and we have this team built that are my heroes, like, man, like if that mosquito can make that big of a difference, how much more of a difference can I make? Can they make? Can all of us make together? Like, it's huge. It just is. That's a fact. If we have it, not as an afterthought, but as like foresight and like, instead of hindsight, like we're going to do this and we're going to we're going to cast the vision, people are going to catch the vision, and we're going to take action.
It's beautiful. The moment, I wouldn't call it giving up, but where you're looking at, the bigger picture, feeling guilty, letting them down. Am I the right person? It kind of gave you a little bit of permission to reframe it a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
I use the word, Justin, a lot, the phrase context is decisive. So I'm going to throw out a hypothesis here, connecting your story. I use this phrase a lot on our podcast, clean it up or dial me in where I'm maybe off or wrong. And it's a question ultimately, Justin, but some observations and some comments. Addiction, which you struggled with, and from what I know from a very near and dear friend of mine, a former business partner, somebody I've known since I was 6 years old, and other people in my life and world, it's very real. Yeah. And it is fighting for your life every day, even though it's seemingly people are clean or they have a certain period of time where they're not using, or whether it's drinking or pills or whatever it is. And it could be gambling. The fight for your life is real. So there's no drama in when you say, you're fighting for your life. And to do the fight for others, for the forgotten, it has to start with you. And whether it was the first time, the second time, but when you got on top of it and were able to dominate it, if you will, for lack of a better word, and clean me up where I'm wrong, you said something that really spoke to me, where it sucked your soul and it left you empty and you lost a sense of who you are. The other side of that is when you have nothing, you can do anything with it. And it's like a blank canvas. So the last piece maybe of you to let go of what still was there was that 33 pounds. And while it's literally, I'm being a little bit facetious, but literally, it was matter, it was material, liquid or whatever. But that was like that last millimeter of the 100-meter dash that said, whoa. And the context, which is always decisive, reframed it. And I'm not saying you were giving up, but you were questioning and you were doubting, which is human.
Yeah.
And this gentleman on the phone and who he got you in touch with, and your ability to get healthy again and come back with fresh eyes and a new context, and that frame, that canvas that painters paint on, which we are all artists of our own life. There was nothing there. And now you filled it in with pure possibility. You can hear the passion. You can hear the love. You can hear, you're like, I don't want to get too, you're reborn. You're transformed. And it's just so touching and so moving. And, you're weaving in Swahili philosophy and these ancient thoughts and lessons that you've learned, and using modern technology and the struggles and the lessons that you've learned from your own addiction and your own suicidal thoughts. It's just a beautiful bringing together. And I'm not doing this to blow smoke up your butt. I'm just very present to it all, bringing it together, because here's where I want to land the plane. Depression, suicide. I don't know if it's a pandemic, it's an endemic, especially with young men in North America. It's real. Yeah. And with the isolation of social media and the swipe left, swipe right, and being an outlier and disconnected and not having that passion and that purpose that's a driving force or an anchor, or not having the ability to be a leader or be led, or the community and an idea that can drive and be the fuel for you, whether it's digging a well or fighting for the forgotten, is a real serious problem. And I want to hear what you have to say to that. And I'm not excluding women. I just know as a man that I see it. Look, I have a lot of guests on this podcast, whether they're speakers, sociologists, anthropologists, physicians, marketers. I hear it from all different realms, all different industries, all different disciplines. It's tough out there. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I would say, I feel like this has been coming up more and more and more over recent years, but I feel like part of my responsibility as a nonprofit founder, an executive director, or a going on having opportunities like this to go on a podcast, or the sacred opportunity to stand on a stage and have people listen to my story. I hope me sharing, whether it's raw or real and being vulnerable, hopefully they don't want to be anywhere else for that 45 minutes or that hour, like except hearing the story that hopefully can inject just some hope, some love, some compassion, and some practical takeaways. The reason I share that is I think I hear from both women and men. Like a little bit of my story, it's a bit of an anomaly or a big contradiction, right? Here's a guy that punches people for a living.
The
But here's
Viking.
yeah, the Viking that's drilling wells, and that's it's such a wild story. I get it. I am the exact opposite of who these people are that I'm called to love, and so we look like we're from two different. We're about as opposite as two human beings can be. Yet my story is how, especially a woman named Mama Miriamo, she stands just over 4 foot tall. She weighs at most 80 pounds. She's blind. It's called river blindness. And meanwhile, I was over in Las Vegas and she's living perhaps the simplest of all human existence. But my story is how this little woman changed this big man's life
Yeah.
in a deep, profound way. And perhaps she can do the same for others as I share her story. So, why I bring that up is whenever I shared my story of suicide, like my suicide attempt, like real deal ones, I took 80, almost 3 prescription bottles of Oxycontin, a whole handle of tequila, 5 of the strongest Xanax the strongest Xanax that they put on the market. Like I was trying to go out. And when I shared this story with the Pygmy people, both the Mbuti and the FA, like they couldn't get their minds wrapped around it. Why would anyone do that? The one elder thought he heard of someone, somewhere, sometime attempted or took their life. Like it was almost a legend to them. It wasn't
Right.
real. And so meeting
Right.
me, hearing my story of actually doing it, like it blew their mind. It didn't just hurt me. It would have hurt my family. It would have hurt my friends. It would have hurt my tribe, my community. Why would anyone ever do that? And so that was a huge light bulb moment to me. It's like, oh my gosh, like this is, and not that it hasn't happened in history and everything else, it has, but for the most part, people that live in community, deep, connected community, like they don't struggle with that. And so it is a bit of a modern day phenomenon, especially in the last few years. Since COVID in 2022, I lost 7 friends.
Mm.
I shared the eulogy at 3 of their funerals. Let's say 7 friends, 5 died by their hand, died by suicide. 1 died by overdose. 1 died by natural causes. And so that was a rough year. It's like, oh my gosh, here's my friend who's a father of 4 and has a beautiful relationship and marriage. And like he didn't feel like he could reach out to me, to them. Like his son that's 18 years old is the one that found him. Sorry, it was his son that was 14 years old that found him and told his brother that was 18. And I was just like, whoa, what is happening? And so I feel like men need to know, like, hey, we're in this together. You're not alone. Like life's not meant to be done alone. And like you don't have to. I tried it. And I lost my whole identity was wrapped up in fighting and what I could do and how I could win and who I could beat up and how I could make a name for myself. And man, I found out it was empty. But man, when I started fighting for people and started allowing myself to open up, be raw, be real, be vulnerable, like my own story, not in a way that just purged it on people and was like verbally vomiting on them, like safe places and safe spaces. And also like allowing myself to find those right people that I could share with and being a safe space for them to share with me. And if I didn't have the resources, hopefully I knew the right direction for them to go or the right person or the right professional help. And that has really changed my life and changed my community of men where they know they can come over to the house at any time, get in the cold plunge, get in the sauna, us go on a hike, and then me give them a book or me point them to this person that helped me in a great way or this community. And so, yeah, I hope that my story and that men can start to really find, men and women, right? But find your tribe, find your community, and find the things that feed your soul. We need it.
And as you said at the top of our conversation, start somewhere.
Yeah,
And,
anywhere.
and look, it takes courage. It took courage. You're the Viking and you were beating up giants. And, it took courage for you to go in and acknowledge your addiction and face your demons. And the other side of it is you're better for it. The world is better for it. Your foundation, Fight for the Forgotten, is just doing incredible work. We're going to, in our show notes, we'll put all the relevant information about how to make a difference, how to contribute, how to plug into the opportunities there. And it's an opportunity for our tribe, our subscribers, our listeners. I recently got a message from somebody that they listened to our podcast with their daughter. I thought that
Oh,
was
great.
really special,
Special.
very, 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 very touching, just incredible. We've had a lot of really powerful women on, and the listener wanted her daughter to listen in, and just, it's incredible. Like you said, you never know, right? It's the ripple effect. So for everybody out there, Justin also has his own podcast. I feel like we've done your podcast on this podcast
Yeah, sure.
because it's Overcome with Justin Wren. And while I know that it's not about you, I contend that you are a vehicle for all of these virtues. You're the vessel by which these messages, these virtues, these core ideas, and the essence can emanate out to the world. So thank you for just embodying and being the skin and bones of it and making that difference. The journey is incredible. We've come to the end of our podcast here. If you haven't already, as you've listened, to like and comment, please do that. Subscribe, share with it. And Justin, I just want to acknowledge your honesty, your vulnerability. I'm sure you've heard this before. Your willingness to be an open book and your stand for making a difference, not just for the forgotten, for everybody and anybody, whether it's the person you're sitting next to on the plane, on the way to your next keynote, your neighbor, somebody you run into at the grocery store. And like you said, you bring them in for a hike, a plunge, a sauna, you give a book, you point them in the best direction you know how. And it seems like you've reconstituted your cells at the DNA level, or your DNA at the cellular level,
So I
to
needed it.
become, yeah. And boy, we are better for it. So just thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Well, if I could leave another word, like if the listeners of this podcast liked this one, I know you're going to like another one of the Keynote Curators, and that was Allison Levine. If you missed that one, go back, please, and watch that. She's an amazing friend of mine, mine and Seth's, and she's an inspiring, epic human, and I love her. And so I'm so grateful for her help in my career and just this journey. But also, I think, man, like whenever I get one of the things you shared, I had this idea, and at first I was silently, giving 10% of my keynote fees or more back to Fight for the Forgotten, because it's my opportunity to keep giving them a voice and keep making impact. But man, now it's been like a light bulb moment. Oh, I got to tell people when I get up there in a nonchalant way, but to include them in on it. Hey, because you brought me in, guess what? You are actually making an impact. So thank you. After a strong intro saying thank you for you making a difference today. All of you being here, just listening to this story, we're going to go do some good stuff with it, right? And so there's all these different ways and little opportunities. The person right in front of you, the person serving you coffee, the person behind you in the drive-through at the coffee shop doing a little act of kindness, right? There's all these different ways, but look for them. Like, have your eyes open, ears open, heart
That's
open,
right.
mind open.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it just becomes the zest of life. It really does. And so thank you for having me on today. This is an epic opportunity.
You're very, very welcome. And my wife is Argentine. I've lived in Latin America for 25 years. And I famously joke that the Latino goodbyes are longer than the party. The party could be 2 hours and the goodbye is 3 hours. So this feels like a Latin goodbye, but you use the word, keep your head on a swivel. And I'm just going to connect because Bill Walton, who was somebody that was important, and I worked with him as a speaker, and he just was so generous recently passed, in the moments where it's either before or after the keynote or the pre-event call, or he's texting me as he's going to get into his Tesla and turn on the dead and drive out of San Diego to somewhere in Southern California and give a keynote to my clients and people that he's delivering the keynote to. We talked about sports and whether it's your training and understanding your body and what's possible with the physical aspect of it. And then there is the spiritual and emotional aspect of it and the psychological aspect of it. I played basketball as a kid. And when you play team defense, our coaches used to teach us, and we played man to man. We didn't play zone. Have your head on a swivel, right? And I talk to my daughters about this. I call it the world around you. And it's right there. Everything you need is within your periphery. Have your head on a swivel and learn, observe, borrow. We use the word borrow, don't steal, like take what appeals to you, make it your own version of that. But that head on a swivel is just such a great metaphor for your life and the contribution you're making. So thank you for reminding me of that so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So just extending it a little more. One more.
And another thing.
I really do want to respect everyone's time, but
no, we're good. We're good.
Like sometimes people just feel like they're in too much of a rush or in too much of a hurry, or you're having these conversations, and doesn't it suck whenever someone you're talking to, like they're looking past you or looking down at their watch, or checking their phone? So one of the things I learned from our well drillers was like, because I came in hot. And I'm like, let's go. We got to move. We got to do this. And we're not on Africa time. We're pulley, like slow down. Like we got something to do. We got a mission. Let's go. And in a kind way, but like I was the one that would ride the team, and they told me something that slowed me down, stopped me in my tracks. They said, you Americans, you Westerners, you're the ones with the watches. But us in Africa, we're the ones with the time. And I was like, whoa, okay, I get it. Because I would be one to rush through a meal, and there was these really special opportunities to connect. Or I would miss something if I wasn't open and looking and having my head on a swivel, but my head on a swivel with a little bit more time and buffer. There's times that it's okay. Like if I come into a keynote, I'm at their disposal. Like if they want me to come to an event, come there, come anywhere. You ask, I'm there, or I'll offer. And if it's not imposing, I'm at your disposal. Like let me be involved. So anyways, it's like create that buffer, like have that head on a swivel. It's not always going to be there, but if you can actually spend just another 30 seconds or 3 minutes or 30 minutes, there's these opportunities for impact that just deepen and widen.
And one more thing, Coach Wooden used to tell Bill, and he would say, Seth, it's Bill with 2 L's. He just couldn't help himself. He used to say, Coach Wooden used to say, be quick, but don't hurry. And it's probably no different in the octagon, probably no different when you're drilling. There is a moment to be quick, but don't hurry, right?
Yep.
So I think we could go on and on. As I say, we've always left a little bit on the table. I appreciate your time, your generosity of spirit, your willingness to be on and share your story and make a difference for me and for everybody listening. To our listeners who have come back faithfully, thank you. We appreciate it. We don't take it for granted. And those first timers or returners after a little bit of a hiatus, welcome back. Thank you for giving us a shout out. Share it with everybody, and you'll be smarter for it.